I'm going to introduce our prestigious chair today. I'm delighted to introduce Sue McGregor, who for many years was the voice of Radio 4's Women's Hour. She also fronted the Today programme for 17 years, and she's currently working on a programme called The Reunion, which she tells me is starting again next month. It's in the Desert Island Discs slot on Sunday mornings. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Sue, who's going to introduce the panel. This is a participatory event. Please make your views known, ask questions, give your opinions, and hopefully enjoy this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camilla. Can you hear me at the back? Good, you can. If you say no, I know that's not true. Anyway, thank you so much all for coming and to Oundle Food Festival for inviting me. It's a great honour to be here, and that you're all here on a... Is it the first day of summer? Anyway, it's very good of you to be here. In my lifetime, and I dare say in the lifetime of people half my age here, and I do see quite a few of them, the British have moved, I suppose, from being a nation rather despised for its lack of interest in food, to being, if not a nation entirely of foodies like Italians or French people, a nation proud of what it serves up at home, what it grows in its fields, and what it eats in its restaurants, and what it watches on the telly for food as well. It's something we now, I think, in this country enjoy and care about. And we've enjoyed talking about it too, which we're going to do this afternoon with your help, and above all with the help of this excellent panel. We're here to... This seems to be going on and on, but if you can hear me, I'll continue. Thank you. Partly in a cathedral and partly... we're here to talk about feeding the next generation, addressing issues that embrace the producer, the retailer, and the consumer. We learned only this week about how fast our population is growing, and we're comparing the census results, which are soon to be officially published 10 years ago. Our population throughout the UK has risen by 7%, that's a lot, and the population in London, where I come from, has grown almost twice as fast as that, by 12% in 10 years. And if we're only about 62% self-sufficient in this country, what does the population rise mean? Because it's doubtless going to continue to rise. These are questions that we might address this afternoon. Also, how do large producers balance their own economic needs with what's best for the planet? Is it practical to concentrate on English food and what's best for the countryside in our shopping trolleys? Is local always best? Is organic always better? That's going to come up. And our wet summer, has it had its effect? Well, we know it has a bit. But farmers are here to tell us, has it had its effect on our food? Now, let me introduce the panel. On my far left is Anthony Davidson, fifth-generation farmer who'd like a lot more of us, surprise, to shop locally. And he set up the Big Barn campaign 12 years ago to encourage local producers to sell locally. Simon Fisher of the National Farmers Union. We met before, Simon. Believe it or not, I actually once chaired an NFU conference. I mean, was anyone less qualified to chair it? Very nice.
That was bad as taking the WI.
Yeah. Anyway, Simon advises locally on all aspects of farming policy, including the CAP, and he's been involved in dealing with agricultural crises like BSE and foot and mouth. On my right, William Hudson, my far right, William Hudson, the bearded gent, yes, he's been farming all his working life, and he told me before that he used to sell fish that he pulled up out of the sea. And he has a special interest in crop production design and in the supply businesses for the major multiples. Dr. Andrew Ormerod, on my immediate left, has been principal economic botany researcher at the Eden Project. How many people here have been to the Eden Project? Wow. Since 1998, and he's keen to raise public awareness of all developments in agriculture and food crops. And Keith Turnbull, on my immediate right, would be happy if we all started the day with a bowl of Weetabix, because he's their head of policy and compliance. At the other end of the food chain, he has a special interest in food sustainability. So that's the panel, as they say, on any questions. And can I just reinforce what Camilla said? Please do feel you're very much part of this. Some people have sent in questions already, and I'm going to call on one or two of them first. But there will be moments when you want to disagree with either the premise behind the question or with what somebody here has said. Please wave something that I can see. And the acoustics are good in this room, we'll be able to hear you. So the first question that we're going to deal with came in from John Lampkin, retired farmer. Are you here, John?
I am.
Oh, good, you've got a good voice. You don't need a mic, but you've got one. You're going to ask about the implications of the government's new green food project.
I am indeed. Good afternoon, thank you. The Office for National Statistics has projected that the UK population will reach 70 million by 2027. At the same time, latest figures show that we are now only 62% self-sufficient in the production of indigenous foods, a fall from a high in the mid-1980s. Is the government's Green Food Project to produce more food with less environmental impact likely to help or hinder this looming crisis? And in the light of these figures, must we now embrace new science and larger units of production without delay?
Well, the implications of the government's green food project can get us self-sufficient. Actually,
yeah, I think it's interesting that I do actually think there's a middle ground with that, what you're saying, because Wheatbix is a massive producer of and handler of food. We produce, just to give you an idea, 17 million Wheatbix a week. It's a huge number. When I first came to Wheatbix, we very much sourced grain on the world market. We just went anywhere to buy the cheapest grain. And about 3 years ago, I got involved in Project Wheatbix, which is about the supply and sourcing of local grain. And I started to look at different ways in which you could do that. And the thing that we discovered was that our marketers went out and asked people. And 3 years ago, there was an interesting change in dynamics. There were a lot of people who liked organic food, but the thing that was coming through from the public was local sourcing was more important than organic. And that change has continued now. And certainly from our point of view, organic food has dropped up dramatically, and sustainable food and local sourcing has become more important. So 3 years ago, we launched the local growers group, as we called it, and we now have just under 200 farmers growing wheat for Wheatbix within 50 miles of Burton Latham.
What proportion is that of the entire Wheatbix sales?
We take 80% now of what we take in through local sourcing.
That's a big change.
It's been a huge success. And it was almost like a win-win-win because the farmers like it. It's amazing how much they lock into the desire to have an end use for that product. We then, from our consumers like it, but the environment gains as well because by nature of it being local and some of the other conditions, then we improve the environment as well.
Okay, part of the question from John Lampkin was about the implications of the government's policy. Is it going to be more and more bigger and bigger farming units and the worries from the environmentalists about what that's going to do?
Thank you. So, first of all, I just want to congratulate Keith for getting Wheatbix in on the second sentence. That's seriously. We've got in your box, sir, we've got three big elephants, or bullets as we really would call them in this country. We've got GM, we've got ambient aspirant rhetoric from the government, and we've got the local thing.
Ambient aspirant
rhetoric. It's a phrase that we've coined in standards of the London Food Group. This is where a lot of people think they want to do something, they know absolutely nothing about it because there's a background ambient rhetoric about it. And sadly, their idealism get the head of their ignorance. Let me unpack those three issues. The GM thing, we've got lots of very good farming practice, which to a large extent gets around the need for GM. The issues are around waste, the issues are around marketplace and so on. The two big GM things that we've done, which is Roundup Ready sugar beet, Roundup Ready maize, have failed unbelievably. Roundup, as a very quick redress, masks the, for some people, Roundup or glyphosate will mask the initial symptoms of multiple sclerosis by slowing down synaptic response. Go Google it, there's masses of that. So you've got two big crops that Monsanto tried to dominate, and to a large extent it's failed. We're now using more chemical and it hasn't worked. The GM thing will carry on being debated. Personally, I don't like the idea of somebody owning genome, and that's what this is about, although they say it isn't. The other bit is about local and localising supply. Our problem is that our alternative route to retail, apart from supermarket, has disappeared. I'm involved with, even if I did say the name people, I'm not going to hear it, I'm involved with a big farm called Oundle We do 2,500 acres of veg, of which 250 is organic. And selling local is more and more difficult because the supermarkets label things up locally, they make those connections for their own reasons, and they do that quite well. But as far as things going through food service and going into the local secondary wholesalers, everybody know what a secondary wholesaler is? Primary wholesaler in London, where they specialise in one or two commodities. Secondary wholesalers gathers a whole load of wholesale veg fruit from all over the place, sells it out to hotel restaurants, etc. They don't want to know, because they can buy it cheaper from Holland, and they can also buy surplus to order, surplus to program from markets where that stuff is going in to from the supermarket surplus sale. So making a primary profitable sale is getting more and more difficult. 2 years ago, we were making more money out of a local sale. Now we're making more money out of a supermarket sale. We're scratching our heads to try and identify how we can attack a local market and get people to buy into it, because there's no connection, or there's a disconnection between the person that wants to buy it at retail and the middleman. What's the third one?
Well, Chris Gill, are you here? Yes, you are. Chris, can I ask a question on your behalf, if you wouldn't mind? Because it's picking up from what we've been saying, or some of been saying about GM. And I think your question is really, should we avoid it because we don't like what the implications are, or should we embrace it as the answer to our agricultural crisis, or certainly...
Or part of it.
Or part of it. What? Part of the answer. Okay. Would anyone from the audience like to pick up on GM crops? Anyone who shops or grows, a view for or against? Somebody nodded, but I don't know whether she was nodding for or against. Would anyone like to ask a question on GM beyond what Chris has? Otherwise, I'll go to Nigel of the NFUs. Simon, sorry. I was thinking Nigel Fisher as opposed to Simon.
Yeah, I'm just going back to the Green Food Project. I think the perspective of this question obviously was looking at the UK, and actually if we turn it into what is happening in the whole of the world, we've got a population forecast of some 9 billion people on the planet by 2050. And that actually means to feed those people, we need 60% more food production over the whole of the planet. This is science and experts looking at the foresight report.
So who are the people who would take that as flat, not us?
Well, it actually means that all of agriculture and the food and farming industry has actually got to turn around. We had a green revolution 50, 60 years ago, which probably introduced practices which, at the end of the day, produce the food that actually caused problems in the environment as well. Nobody's going to deny that. But actually what we need to do is have some sort of food revolution, which actually means we can feed the planet. Looking at the figures, you see how many people are starving in this world, how many people are undernourished, and then look at the other extreme and think how many people are overweight. Mm-hmm. There's a massive issue of lack of distribution of food in the world, the wrong type of food. We're eating the wrong food. This is a huge issue which is the Green Food Project going to tackle that? I don't suppose it's going to provide all the answers, but at least it's a start of looking at the problem, because within 40 harvests, 40 years, we've got to start feeding, or less than that, 38 years, we've got to start feeding 9 billion people. And that is one huge challenge that's coming at us. And it's the perfect, as Beddington, the chief scientist, when he was in that position, described, it's the perfect storm. It really is a serious problem to go address. So how we actually get there is obviously the Green Food Project points up from the UK's perspective, what we felt, what the government and other organisations felt to be the first sort of strategic steps in actually getting to that.
Okay, GM, you didn't treat very...
GM, I wasn't ducking the issue on GM. GM has a part to play. Basically, if you go around the whole of the world, most other countries in the world now are using GM in some shape or fashion. I don't disagree if Mr. Gates, who with all his vast wealth, is putting what, £10 million into a research, $10 million into a research institute to look at nitrogen fixing wheat. There are all sorts of issues around GM and its public acceptability as well, but it is happening. It's a reality in a lot of other parts of the world. And if you look at the politics of the world at the moment and food security, in 2008 when the recession hit, there were food riots in some countries. The Arab Spring, we're still in that, it's in Syria now. It is largely a result of food poverty rather than anything else. Is that this is starting to actually bear down on politicians quite a lot. And this is partly the response.
The Arab Spring actually started with a guy having his food trolley kicked over by a police force.
Indeed, yeah. So you look at where people riot generally. The French Revolution started on the basis of lack of food. So we start looking. GM is part of the solution. The gentleman back said exactly the same. It's going to be part of the solution. Its consumer acceptability, undeniably in Europe and in this country, is a hard one to crack. But it's got to have a place, a role to play.
Well, GM is not exactly an additive, but it's sort of manipulating the genetic background of food. But Sophie Neal, who's not present, has sent in a question about what you add to food, and she said, as a new parent, how can we stop food companies marketing food to children as healthy, when in fact it may rely on hidden chemicals and sugars to make food more palatable? E.g., she said, I didn't know this Petit Filou, which is those baby yogurts that every mother I know gives her children, contains high fructose corn syrup, benzene, and it's added to children's drinks and so on. Who in the panel would like to tackle this? What goes into popular supermarket food?
Okay.
Do you want to start?
I guess I can start because I feel pretty clean on this week. It doesn't do that sort of thing. Having said that, one of the things that brings out of this is, and we'll talk about it later, I guess, on food claims and things like that. It's very often that a company will make a claim about one particular nutritious characteristic and ignore the other one. So, for example, they will say it's low in fat, whereas it's absolutely stuffed with sugar or something like that. And
what kind of fat?
Well, and lots of fat as well. So it is a difficult area, and the law finds it very hard to control that sort of thing. And they are getting better at it. So, for example, breakfast cereals, which is the area I'm in, we cannot advertise to children if we have a certain score. With the nutrition characteristics of a product are calculated into a score called the Ofcom score. And if this score is higher than 4, then we cannot advertise our breakfast cereals on the television. And
do you have any breakfast cereals you're not allowed to advertise?
No, we steadily brought them down into that category now.
So it has made a difference.
It's made a major difference, yes. And in some ways it's been able to allow us to be more competitive. So some of the Kellogg's products, whatever, can't actually get into that. So there is work. But it's those sort of things are things that I find annoying. For example, you can't describe a breakfast cereal as high fat because there's hardly no fat in it. So if you come out with a claim low fat, it doesn't really mean it.
Sophie's question mentioned the word healthy.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to, well, you are allowed to put healthy and add this sugar that she doesn't like, which is fructose corn.
Yeah, that's right, yes, and so forth. Yeah.
So
you can get away with it. And
is that bad?
But that is being tightened up. And is it bad for you? It's not as good as some of the other ones.
Yeah, but we think that our food is absolutely high-fat by this sort of regulation, but actually you can still say something's healthy if, strictly speaking, it isn't.
Yes, although, and I was going to come on to it later, but some of the new changes in the regulations which come in 6 months, and it's a European regulation called the Food Directive, are changing that so that we will not be able to make as many claims. The food industry won't be able to make as many claims as they have been in the past.
It's going to make a big difference. Anyone else like to answer? Would you like to?
I think it's great that there's a lot of legislation around. what I'd love to see is people getting a lot more involved in food so they understand where it comes from and understand its nutritional value. And I think one of the government's policies should be to get a lot more about food into the school curriculum. So that we're involved in a project in Leicester where we built an allotment outside a primary classroom, and the kids are going out and planting seeds, growing vegetables and fruit, eating it, and then learning to cook it. And after that, learning to sell it. And we have places on Big Barn where they can sell their homegrown produce. And by getting much more involved in basic foods, fruit and veg, and learning how to cook it, that could make a huge difference. And when they go to the supermarket and see these, well, they don't want to go to the supermarket. When they go to the shops and look at these labels, they go, well, why don't I just make a smoothie out of some of my veg and fruit instead? And that's what I'd like to see.
Simon, is this bad news for the NFU? You can't have all your customers have grown their own food.
The fact is there isn't going to be enough room for everybody to start going out and growing their own food. There's we've got the world stats, even our local relation figures. I wholeheartedly agree with the sentiments about education. Education is vital. I think there's now a generation who basically haven't been through a school where they've learned about food in a way that I might have done or my parents might have done. And we seem to have dropped off the importance of learning about food. One of my biggest bugbears is being told when it's appropriate to throw away a piece of food, and in actual fact it's perfectly still edible to eat. People who don't realise that sell-by date is at the end of the life of that piece of food will naturally follow the date and throw it out. It's a huge, apart from the waste of food it is anyway, we throw away something like a third of the food we buy fresh as waste. It's appalling. So getting some education back in the system, and I know from an NFU perspective, trying to get food back in the school curriculum, the cooking of it at the moment, is really hard work.
But there must be some mums here who've got a view on this. Do any of you have children who are at school where food is on the curriculum in the sense that they're sort of Jamie Oliver has spread his wings and made a difference? Anyone like to give us their views on this? Yes,
I was just going to say, in the primary school, the national curriculum, in both the science that you're supposed to cover and the design and technology, cooking and also healthy eating and balanced diet and growing plants, etc., is in there. So I would imagine quite a few primary school children have grown their own vegetables.
It's in the national curriculum for primaries?
Yes, it is.
Not for secondary?
Well, I think probably that's because... Correct, yes.
We hear terrible stories of children eating well thanks to people like Jamie Oliver at school. And
yeah.
Their parents are out, the mum's outside with a deep fried Mars bar. Yes.
I'm obviously not a mum, but having recently had children that have come through out of the secondary system, I got the impression almost that cooking in the secondary school system, the state system, was hitting a health and safety problem. That actually they may have had, I think in the school that my children went to, they did do elements of it, but it was so incredibly dull and boring and safe and uninteresting that it didn't really merit the title or the description of what might once be called home economics.
Yes. Sorry, can you speak up? There's a mic coming for you. You did food technology?
I did food technology at Prince William and Oundle, like in year 10 and year 11, and there wasn't really any problems with health and safety. But I think at Oundle school here, they don't teach it, they don't even have kitchens. So I think...
Can you remember what the food technology was that you did? I mean, did it involve actually cooking?
Yes, yeah, like every week. Yeah. All sorts of things.
No, come on.
I specialised in meatballs. But yeah, there wasn't a problem with health and safety.
Are you a good cook now?
Well, yeah.
Well, we may come back to school, so I think it's terribly important, but is Eleanor fair trade town? What legislation might be?
Yes, Oundle is a fair trade town, which means that we're concerned with fair prices and conditions for farmers and producers in the developing world, and we encourage shoppers to buy goods that are fairly traded. My question is, to what extent do farmers and food producers in Britain get fair prices for the food that they produce?
Did you, have you got milk? I was just there's probably quite a few of you, thank you for the question, were this morning to John Humphreys, who he had an organic farm at one point, so you can't show him up on farming questions, and he was talking about the sort of milk, not exactly right, but blockades that have gone on. And it did seem to me, listening, not knowing a huge amount about the subject, that it was deeply unfair that a lot of milk producers are not even, are actually losing money by selling their milk to the middlemen and then on to the supermarkets. Shall I give you a chance to grandstand, Simon?
You can indeed, yes. Yeah, it's the milk issue.
Sorry, slightly away from fair trade. We will know that.
The current dairy price, we call it the price tax crisis rather than anything else, is if you like, a good illustration of the sorts of pressures that our industry are facing in the supply chain. And it's not, Keith very aptly talked about his group of producers who produce the grain for Weetabix. There are an awful lot of retailers and food processors who basically buy on the stock market and buy it as cheaply as possible and make it and put it in their stores on that basis, largely to keep the cost down to the consumer, but equally so to make sure that the retailer share price is maintained. What we face in the dairy sector is that our dairy farmers are being asked to continue producing milk at a loss, which is an unsustainable position. There's a very good illustration of a young guy from Matlock on TV last night who said, well, I might last another 6 months, but I don't know when and how I can continue at this basis. So all we're asking for from the supply chain is a fair price so that we can actually make enough money out of the milk to be able to reinvest in the business and keep the business modern and sustainable.
Who's making the profit in the end?
Well, the profits. If you look at the way in which it's distributed, pint of milk about 46 pence. The farmer's getting 13p of that pint of milk. The rest is obviously soaked up by the supply chain in getting it to the shop via the processor and into the shop. So what we find is that as supermarkets operate, if they want to make something a loss leader, and very often milk is a loss leader in supermarkets, there's Asda and Morrison's at the moment are having their own price war about who can sell it cheapest. But as it's a loss leader, then they use it to get people into their supermarkets to buy other products. And that's where the margin. So they squeeze the margin, that's passed through the processor, that's then passed down to the farmer. It's a farmer, you're at the bottom end of the production line, you're a weaker seller, and it's this dysfunctionality of the supply chain, which is not only in milk, it's happening now. We've got examples of it now in horticulture as well, where it's really starting to bear down on some of our basic staples in horticulture, like cauliflowers and brassicas.
Yeah, you could say though however unpleasant it is, it's the market operating.
It may well be the market.
What about what used to be called the common market? Is there any help available from Brussels or Strasbourg?
We've largely dismantled the system that
the old
CAP system that basically meant you could massage the system to make the price as fair as possible. We've dismantled that because of things like grain mountains and milk lakes and butter mountains. So that's largely being dismantled in terms of intervening in the market to actually provide a fair price, which I can remember going back a few years now. So yeah, I mean there are one or two safety net provisions, but they're very minuscule. They can still buy butter up and store it, but then you've got to release it at a later date and depress the price again. The key thing about this crisis is that the processors in the middle of this have been forced to reduce their margins on the liquid side of things, so the milk that you drink. Believe it or not, the key determinant of this crisis has been a drop in the price of cream. So as the global price of cream dropped by several £100 a tonne,
Because milk is obviously skimmed off skim.
Yeah, that was giving the processors enough of a margin to be able to pay the milk producers and the dairy farmers at the bottom a sensible price. Because that's plummeted down, that's basically meant, and the supermarkets are squeezing the price so hard at the other end of the liquid commodity, so they've had to, in 2 cuts, chop 4 pence a litre off to the farmers, bringing average cost of production about 12 pence a litre. Farmers being paid, 27% of dairy farmers, to be more precise, are being paid in the region of 24, 25 pence. So that's not a sustainable position for those guys who are losing lots of money.
Thank you, Sam. I think we have a dairy farmer in the audience, Jan McCourt. Is he?
I am in the audience, but I'm not a dairy farmer.
Oh, you're not? I'm sorry, Jan.
No, that's right.
But you did have a question.
Yes, I sent in questions that touched on this, which I haven't written out, so I'll probably be far more rambling.
Shall I tell you what it was?
See how I was.
Sounds good. So, is the forthcoming showdown in the dairy industry the first real sign of the same phenomenon appearing in the world of big food?
What I meant was we have a real disconnect in terms of an understanding of the cost of food and the value of food and the price of food. And even listening so far to the wise words spelled out from the panel, we have a real food is just too cheap. It's just at a very basic level, and running across to the issues on education, because there is a lack of education, a lack of understanding, food no longer has a way, a mechanism even, as I think Simon was saying, of finding its value, because it's dictated by price makers who are the large retailers. And so the actual producers are by and large are no longer capable of making a price in their product.
Right, thank you, Jan. William Hudson, would like to take this.
Yeah, thank you. We do not give the supermarkets any moral imperative, and we expect them, as well as all the other businesses in this country, to make lots of money. If we were to boycott them, or one of them, to show them our strength, we might be able to kick them in the nuts and get them to understand this. Simon was alluding to the fact that similar things go on in horticulture and field veg. This happened 20 years ago. Can I do a little bit of audience participation?
Yeah.
Right, indulge me, ladies and gentlemen. Lettuce grower. We're going to talk about the largest lettuce grower in the country. Anybody know what they're called? No, it's Lammies. Okay. Give me an idea of what their turnover is in millions per annum and the value of the lettuce that they produce, not only from this country but from other countries, in order to supply the supermarkets, mostly Tesco. So I want to hear how many millions. Give me a guess on how many millions. Sorry?
200.
200. That's a wild guess. Okay, I'll put you out of the misery. It's 420. 420 million, that's an awful lot of lettuce. Now, Shropshire's, who were 380 million lettuce, potato, onion, cabbage business, brassicas, about 340. They're in the process of putting together a strategic alliance. Their aspirations are to make 1,000 million turn out of the business in order for them to cut costs with their management and to do the job more efficiently. Now, with 100 acres or 200 acres, nobody else gets a look at the supermarket unless you've got something very, very special. But I think the most important thing here is everything is driven by profit. Everything is driven by the fact that businesses have to make money. And until we show them that there are other things in life, like we want to see a number of farms in the countryside, we want to see the countryside maintained in a way that fits in with our social aspirations and our recreational aspirations as well, this will get worse. So the best weapon we've got is you lot. We've got email, we've got your voices, we've got lots and lots of people wanting to make programs about this. Well, first of all, what they hate, the supermarkets hate having to answer people, you guys. And it's a pain in the neck for them, because they're all duty bound to give you an individual reply. Go and ask them some questions about it. Keep poking at them. But right now, as far as they're concerned, they have no moral imperative. They don't want to do the right thing unless they can kind of make a bit of a fuss about it and make more money out of it. But they really don't want to make do much about it. They want to make more money for their shareholders. That's what they're for. They're not there to supply you with lots of lovely food. They're there to make money for their shareholders.
And I have to say, William, there are customers who are delighted at the price of milk. And, you know, maybe the farming industry has to do its public relations better.
I think that's very true. Sorry, actually, very quickly. You're absolutely right, Sue. And you know, with all the issues, I mean, we're talking about problems with nutrients, problems with pesticides, problems with value chain and profitability. And everybody walks into the supermarkets, and there it is, filled with lovely, cheap, delicious, fresh food. What's the problem? Well, there is a problem, and the only thing that we can do is to start fighting Anthony. Forgive me. Sorry.
I just want to say something about this, that the surveys coming into our companies, I will say that on average across the UK, the average family has £15 a week less to spend this year than they had last year. So the pressure on the average family budget, and I'm not saying that the people in this room are average or not, but the pressure on the average family is great, and they will look for cheap product. So when they go to the supermarket, they will look for something cheap. And when we come to things like sustainability or fair trade with respect and all these sort of things, if that fair trade product or that sustainable product is priced too far above the other one, then we will not sell it. You just can't do it. So you have to, because the majority of the population, and I would put that way over 90% of the population, is price orientated when they buy that food.
Eleanor, you're looking rather cross. You brought up the question of fair trade and how it might be applied, principles might be applied internally. What do you think of what you heard just now from Keith?
Well, I'm sure that people are thinking primarily about price, but obviously there's a moral point to put as well. And so how we educate people.
That's the question, isn't it? And what are your ideas about how it might, even with a small beginning, how would you do it?
Well, I suppose in the fair trade movement, which has been going on for certainly about 20 years, education has been key. When we learn about the conditions in the third world of people who are growing our tea or our coffee, the fact that perhaps selling food at a fair trade price, getting a premium, means that their children are going to school or that they have markets or roads to take their goods to, certainly affects people's mindset. They think that buying fair trade products is actually going to benefit the farmers and the producers. That's why I'm interested to hear how this is being applied in England. Perhaps we've lost the connection between growing and buying food.
Sam, just a quick word.
Yeah, just a quick word. There are three things that people can do, and anybody in this audience can do as well. And I've often been said, maybe not politically correct, but fair trade also can begin at home. But what we're asking people for is fair contracts. Contracts whereby dairy producers they're locked into a contract with a buyer which takes them 12 months to get out of. And it's ridiculous when supermarkets can drop you overnight. We want a grocery adjudicator in place who can, with teeth, to be able to deal with supermarket unfair practice. And there's lists and queues of those things outlined. And we just want a fair price that covers cost of production. I have to say there's one big bit of good news in all the change of this. The very last thing yesterday, even before I cleared the office, was the Co-op. Of the three supermarkets we've named and shamed, the Co-op are rescinding their price cut and increasing it by 4.27 pence a litre to their dairy producers.
Morrison's announced this morning they're going to 5p.
That's very good of them. So a little bit of pressure from dairy farmers, and if you actually, as consumers, also said the same thing to these people when you buy your milk in there. I complained to my local Waitrose in Stamford, which actually is technically in Lincolnshire. Why were they why were they promoting East Anglian product when they were actually in Lincolnshire and they've got the biggest field of vegetables on the back doorstep in South Lincolnshire?
Because they're better, son.
Well, the massive debate. But anyway, the practice is there. There are things you can do as consumers, and actually, ways of consumer support, I think this time, has actually helped the supermarkets realise that they're cutting prices and passing those down to producers like dairy farmers.
Well, Morrison's are now selling cheaper petrol and more expensive milk, so...
More expensive water. We've got a farm shop on Big Barn that's also a dairy, and they're selling their own milk through the farm shop and making good money, and they're cheaper than the supermarket, which is what we really want to see. And we've got 7,000 people on Big Barn, including your farm shop, I think, yeah? And a lot of them are little pound flag, which means that they're cheaper than the supermarket on a lot of products. And my family grow onions in Norfolk, and we get about £100 a tonne every year. And 2 days later on the Tesco shop, they're about 850 now.
But look at the battle when you go around the supermarket. No matter which one you're in, they'll be claiming on every shelf line you look at, every time you look along the shelf to find a product, we're cheaper than Tesco's or we're cheaper than... They're all at it. It's the war between all of them. For market share, that's the issue. That's pushing everything down and down and down.
Another quick word.
Very briefly, I just want to dispel a myth, because fruit and veg is different. I'm obsessed with fruit and veg. It's different from milk. There are no contracts. We do not do business with the supermarket. We do business with a packer. We do business with a marketing agent. There is no contract. If you don't like the price, you don't supply it. It's as simple as that. If the supermarket...
These are the middle.
These are the middlemen. And it's as simple as that. And if you decide not to supply at a price, you go and sell it somewhere else. If they decide they don't like your produce anymore, you can lose it tomorrow. And all of a sudden, your 5 tonnes of strawberries that we used to pick hasn't got a home. It's a very, very unfair system.
Right, now if I may, I'm going to move on to another subject, and if you'd like to have a quick word, we can maybe sort of worm it into this answer. But with the whole title here of this afternoon is Feeding the Next Generation, and I'm hoping that Annie Wright is here. Annie, are you here? Yeah. Oh, right. Veal. That's kind of good. And Rose Veal. This is. Would you like to read just perhaps the second half of your question? You could even just start with. Okay. Give us a short version of your question.
A short version of my question. Yeah. Veal has a very, very bad press from the pre-1980s way that veal was reared in this country, and slightly later date it was reared in the continent in crates. British rose veal, British ruby veal is not. How do we change the public's opinion of a very, very healthy meat, 10% fat, a very delicious meat, which also will help dairy farmers to produce a product that is going to be good for the public, sustainable, because these animals are being killed at the moment.
Rose veal, I had to look this up, because I love veal, and I think a veal chop is one of the nicest things that you could ever eat in one of my local restaurants in North London. Rose veal, to put it very simply, I may go wrong, correct me if I have, is veal from the calves that are allowed to survive rather longer. And
rose veal is basically the way the British do their veal is not termed as rose veal to make it different from traditional continental veal. It is butchered between 7 and 8 months, 6 to 7, 8 months old.
Which is older than normal.
Which is older than normal, which is known as bobby calf, which is about 4 or 5 months old. It is allowed access, they must have access free to roam. There are specific guidelines, and they have to have more than 3 square metres, which is what continentals still do, and keep them in pens. In the UK, they tend to be in big barns, or some people like myself who go further than that, we can to rear them outdoors. The meat is slightly different, because it is obviously going to be pinker, because the animal is slightly older, and it's had freedom to roam.
Does it taste muscle?
So it tastes slightly beefier. And the point it has access to forage means it's not iron deficient, so therefore the meat will also be slightly beefier.
Guilty eating a rose veal, whatever it is, cut of meat.
It is older than chicken, duck, pork, and most sheep, unless you're eating mutton or hogget.
Right. Would anyone on the panel like to pick this up? Could this be an idea for farming more sustainably?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You're absolutely right. I also like eating cuddly bunnies and cuddly lambs as well. Excellent. But the way you're going to do it, and you can't do it, is to throw a heck of a lot of money on an advertising campaign. And that's the problem. Mars bars, bounty bars, God knows what else, they get a huge advertising campaign. It works. My son used to eat sweets called toxic waste. Go figure. It had a huge advertising budget. But sadly, I mean, the product is absolutely A1 right. Sadly, somehow, get together and get a big advertising budget. It's the only thing you can do. It's what works.
But as a small producer, where can we go to get that from?
You can't. You've got to get together and do it.
I've been told by farmers locally, we will not sell beer if it's cruel. And that's from farm shops.
This is brought up quite a lot of times.
Well, that was my experience, because I heard also on, I wake early and listen to more about farming and things, and nothing about it other than what I hear from the radio. And I went into my local, not supermarkets, into my local butchers, and there was an intake of bread. What? Sell veal? That was the result.
Is this general?
This was in Stanford, sorry, in Stanford, yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to say there was an initiative about that veal.
Maybe you could use the mic.
Recently there was a program on the television, I don't know who has been able to see it, about this veal meat, promoting the roast veal, the veal of the male calf. So I think it is a bit like the farmers, who can be extremely powerful, because I'm French and I know how much the farmers are powerful and can lobby a government. That is for the issue of the connection we have with consumers, with the food producer, and take away some of the middlemen and the retail industry. The retail industry has been a problem forever, I think, since day one, when the retail industry started. They have been a problem for the food industry.
You mean the bigger,
producer.
The bigger they get, the more powerful they get.
Yes, and it has always been like that. They are giving the tone, and maybe over time we should learn how to go around it. I'm sure there are means of doing it.
Are you saying farmers need to do more than
Yes, I think farmers, is it farmers, agricultural farmers?
But if you have butchers up against butchers who say we can't sell veal, what do you do?
Well, I think there are many butchers that are left with that problem with the veal meat. And there was the beginning of a group of producers of this meat who started to lobby and market for that veal. So I think there is something already existing, and it's always a matter of getting together.
All right. Anthony, would you like to take up this?
I would love to, yes. I think it's what we desperately need to do is have this reconnection process where people go into farm shops, butchers, and say, "What are about roast veal? What's that all about?" And the butcher might learn from the consumer, and the consumer might learn from the butcher. But it's that reconnection process that gets people talking about food and learning about food. They then social network on Twitter. I'm looking at your rose-tinted glasses at the moment, sorry. But if we all start getting involved in it, it starts to happen, and the more people find out, and the more people start eating roast veal. I think it's very exciting that we've got products like this around, and we've got a huge network of farm shops and butchers out there. It's just a matter of reconnecting them. And what we've got to do is try and give up the supermarket and look for local producers. We go there every week, and perhaps do the supermarket once a month to do the things like this.
You better explain that.
The reason I bought this
you're raising cans of tomato soup.
Yeah. This is madness. I mean, we've got this product because of very cheap oil. And cheap oil means that you can make the tin, and you can put the soup in it, and you can run it around the country. But now oil is getting expensive. Products like this are getting also very expensive. We've got so used to it. And the marketeers tell us we must have it because we're far too busy to make our own. But all we've got to do is just say, well, we don't need this. We can make the similar amount of soup. Well, I made 10 times the amount of this week.
That can cost what, 80 something?
80 something, and I bought some, well, it wasn't the same kind of soup, but it was a huge bowl of soup that was literally 10 times the quantity of this. It was much more healthy, and this is full of sugar and
but this is part of the education need.
This is part of the education we need to do. We need to get involved with our kids, and even the children that learn at school need to go back to their mum and dad and say, oh, we don't need that, mum, that's, let me make some soup. And it's sort of one of the easiest things you can do.
Have you got a quick side?
Two points really. One is, from the point of view of the producers, it's actually, get together, collaborate, and try and sizes everything these days in terms of numbers of people involved. There's an awful lot of help out there for people who are prepared to collaborate and try and promote their product. I think the other thing we could do is...
Do producers collaborate enough?
Well, we're not good collaborators in this country, but we're doing a lot better than we used to.
No, we're not.
No, I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah,
we're not good collaborators.
The collaboration is a good example with Keith and Wheatbix. Those growers who collaborate with Wheatbix, it's a supply chain collaboration. Groups of producers that are producing primary product, like rose veal, as delicious as it is, they pulling together. I don't know about how they've done that yet or not, but anyway. The one thing I wanted to make though, and that was the actual success of the lobby groups who actually in the first place turned us off eating veal. Now I know that in this country we're not big traditional veal eaters, but the lobby groups who decided that veal produced in the old method in the dark was immoral and wrong, have done such a good job on turning us off to veal that they haven't actually come out there and said, oh, by the way, rose veal is a lot better method of production and come out. So they're not actually prepared to come forward and step and say, we're now doing it a lot better. When you go out and buy this product and help the people who are doing it. Right. That's what really annoys me, is that those people go away after they've won their campaign and never come back to the plate again, and it's wrong.
Can I just ask before we just leave the subject, Simon, please?
Would you use the mic, please? Thank you.
You're saying that there's plenty of help available for small groups of producers if they collaborate together. We've been looking desperately for help for the last 6 months and we can't find it anywhere. So who can help us?
Are you NFU members?
We were turned down by the NFUs, which is small.
Right. Just throwing it off the top of my head, there were things like Edlex, Meat and Lice, the old Meat and Livestock Commission, you may have had a brooch then, but actually, go out, try and find places that will help you. I know it's not easy in this current age of austerity, but at least there are organised. I mean, I help.
Spent 6 months trying to do that, and you tried to build a business.
I'll try. I can come and have a word with me afterwards, and I'll try and make a few suggestions.
Tell us in a year whether you'll be well. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm going to ask. Not Ned Sherman, because he's only 3, although he had a very good question. Alistair Sherman. Alistair, can you remember what your question was? Because it was
my question on that?
Yes. No, well, you can give us Ned's later.
Okay.
But your question, which was a very good one to end on, I think.
Imagine you're a benign dictator of the UK. What would you do to change the food production industry?
Well, this is a huge question, which I'm going to ask each person to answer in about 2 minutes. Let me start with Keith.
Okay.
How would you change agriculture as benign? You have 2 minutes from now.
Be careful what you wish for. That's what it is. 50 years ago, after the war, typically you would walk into a shop and the range of foods in front of you would have been hardly anything at all. And you would have bought what you could because that's what was available. You now walk into a shop and you see the most amazing array of food that you could possibly imagine. And as a percentage of your income to buy, it's considerably less. Perhaps too cheap, I don't know. So my answer to your question is be careful what you wish for. You might want to change that. But what we have available to us at this moment in time is a fantastic array of different quality foods. And if you want to buy healthier foods or all these sort of things, they are out there if you're prepared to pay the money. So
you wouldn't do anything.
No, to take up what you made earlier, market forces will drive it. And if the consumers want to change what they eat, then they will.
Andrew,
oh yeah, it's just prompted by talking to some local farmers. I'm thinking about small and medium-sized farmers, and it's very difficult for them to send their produce to the market. They have to go through warehouses and then to supermarkets. And in days gone by, something we should really consider is reusing the railways.
You're a dictator.
Oh yes, we get to when I remember as a youth coming through Oundle, and there was a railway, and there were lots of goods vans actually. I think they were stored at the time, but it used to be a very efficient system where small and medium-sized producers get their produce to the market using regional markets as well. Then there were a lot of sort of promises of better prices from supermarkets. And
what would you do? You would build a railway line?
We had to knock down buildings where the signs were and actually put signs back and reinstate, get cheaper freight on the railways again.
Brilliant. That's phenomenal.
Thanks, Steve. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is ban instant coffee. After I've done that, banning instant coffee. The next thing I'm going to do, because that's only taken a minute or two. Keith's absolutely right, but Keith, you've left out something. But what environmental and social cost? Now, we know about financial costs with all of this, but we know little, although science is beginning to show up the environmental costs and the social costs of having all these things, all these goodies in the supermarkets. So, as a dictator, I'm going to take a huge amount of money out of the economy, and I'm going to spend it on research and development, so we actually start properly understanding the connections between what we eat, between population, between how we produce it and its effects on society and on effects on the environment.
So, R&D.
R&D.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the government would have to spend that.
Yeah.
Well,
we would all have to spend it, but we're still going to have weeklies, Keith, don't worry.
I realise there's still two more voices to be heard. Have you got a quick point to make?
Yes, I think there's an important aspect about both of your points, and that's the issue of the varieties of different foods, which are no longer available. This grand variety in the supermarkets really isn't that much of a grand variety when you look at, for instance, how many varieties of English apples exist, and how many do we actually have available to us in the supermarkets? One or two, if you're lucky. The other selections come from as far as New Zealand, and how economic is that?
Yeah.
What I think we need to focus on, in addition to some of these points already mentioned, is regenerating some of these varieties that maybe have gone out of existence completely or just are underappreciated. Same thing with rare breeds when it comes to livestock. There's been a lot of emphasis on bringing back rare breeds, and it's gotten very popular in sort of the niche areas, but I don't think we're doing enough.
I sense a great deal of agreement from what you said. Thank you very much. Anthony, dictator.
I love it. I would give everyone a range of seats in January and tell them that in August all the supermarkets are going to be closed for a whole month. And give them the address of Big Barn so they can find all their local producers, and they'll suddenly realise that there is an alternative, and they can go and shop locally and get involved with local farmers, and the farmers know that these supermarkets are going to be closed, so that they'll start gearing up for this local supply.
And how would you, this is a very picky question, but what about the people who live in sort of urban conglomerates and, you know...
Well, I haven't found this out very well. The farmers will take their traders in and set up the market, and there's plenty of butchers in the... and there's lots of local shops that can have a table, and people who use the seeds can take their crops and put them on that table and start trading.
Yeah, as a dictator, my note I made is to say stop it raining so we can get on. which I'm not going to claim that, but it's not been answered today, but it's going to be a really tough harvest for our guys out there this year.
And I did ask, I did put a question on the beginning actually about how the wet has affected.
Well, it's affecting crops and it's going to affect quality. We never talk about the quantity until we've got it in the barn, but the key thing is going to be the physical challenge of getting a combine and a tractor unit into a field without sinking up to its axles because the soil is so wet at the moment.
But today is a good day.
Today's a good day. Hopefully it will start to dry up again, but we need this now for the
As
next few weeks.
dictated, you would insist that rain fell in the right places at the right time.
Possibly. Equal amounts of sun and rain is what we need. I've already hinted at the other thing I do, and that's manage sell-by date, so we've been there. But the R&D point's a very good one. We do need science and lots of it.
Can I just come in on that, please?
Yes,
I'd like to ask Keith, with the likely quality of the wheat you buy being compromised this year through the bad weather, and possibility of mycotoxin levels being very high, how are you going to source woolly wheat locally?
This would be a problem to us.
Has the weather affected wheat?
Well, not yet, but it's dramatically. If the harvest is bad, and the gentleman mentions a particular issue that we suffer from mycotoxins, and those levels may be very high as a result of wet harvest, and we will find it difficult to source the grain from the area we want it. So we're looking earnestly at how we can do that. The price is going up all the time. The price of grains is interesting, but I'll just as an aside, the price of grain went up £100 a tonne in the last 3 weeks. So it went from £150 to £250, and it's going north at a vast rate of months. The price of bread in the next 3 weeks will shoot up into.
Is that a special cake? It's what you say, very seriously. I'm just, if I may, I'm going to go back to Alistair and ask him if he would reveal to us the important question that Ned, your 3-year-old, once asked.
He was very keen that the panel addressed the serious issue of why did the chicken cross the road?
I would like to drop that one on you. Why did the chicken cross the road?
Oh, it's easy when you get to the other side. Can I just sort of pull something serious out of that? Because I think this is really important. It's about taking things for granted. And God, this is a tenuous link. That joke was taken for granted for an awful long time, and cheap chicken was taken for granted for an awful long time. And I think something fascinating going on with Hugh, bless him, and what he's done with the chicken out stuff. I think it really shows the power that Hugh or any variations on that name. The power that we actually have is extraordinary. I know I keep talking about it, but it is. And we've all behaved like good little bunnies for years and years and years, dropping along, taking what was there. Vested interest is going to kill us all. And there are all sorts of complicated arguments within that, but vested interest will kill us all. And I believe, to get to the other side, is something that we all need to do in order to learn more. The most tenuous link, I know.
Thank you, that was very nobly done. Keith has whispered in my ear something terribly exciting.
No, there's a packet of Weetabix for everybody in the audience.
Thank you to Oundle for inviting us along. We've had a lovely time, and hopefully you've had a decent time too. Now let's get out into the sunshine. Thank you very much.
Just a couple of words from the organiser. Those who know me, I'm Chris, and I'm a mere spokesman for the organiser of
our Oundle Food Festival. And I would just like to make the point that Oundle Food Festival has joined hands with the Oundle Transition Town in organising this debate. And we're very, very grateful to all parties for having helped us, and particularly to the speakers and Sue McGregor for making it so successful, and to you, the audience, for turning up and supplying your questions and your thought. And clearly we have to take all those thoughts into the future, educate our children, so that they know and will tell their children that £1.99 can never be the proper replaceable cost of a chicken. And so the Oundle Transition Town has a stall there. They are very keen that people express interest by signing up and helping Oundle as a community become more sustainable with all these sorts of initiatives. So thank you very much for doing that in anticipation. And we have a small gift for Sue.
But no weeklies.
No weeklies.
Sorry, no weeklies.